Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert M. Sapolsky. Narrated by Peter Berkrot. Copyright 1994-1998 by W. H. Freeman and 2004 by Robert M. Sapolsky. This unabridged audiobook is published by arrangement with Robert M. Sapolsky and Brockman, Incorporated, and was produced in the year 2012 by Tantor Media, Incorporated, which holds the copyright thereto. Publisher's note: figures and tables from this audiobook appear in a printable PDF, which has been included on the first audio and MP3 CD. If you downloaded this audiobook in a digital format, please visit our website at www.tantor.com and type "Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers" into the search box. Follow the link to the book's page, then click on PDF Extra 1. When prompted, enter the access code RELAX to access the bonus material. Preface. Perhaps you're listening to this while browsing in a bookstore. If so, glance over at the guy down the aisle when he's not looking, the one pretending to be engrossed in the Stephen Hawking book. Take a good look at him. He's probably not missing fingers from leprosy, or covered with smallpox scars, or shivering with malaria. Instead, he probably appears perfectly healthy, which is to say he has the same diseases that most of us have. Cholesterol levels that are high for an ape, hearing that has become far less acute than in a hunter-gatherer of his age, a tendency to dampen his tension with Valium. We, in our Western society, now tend to get different diseases than we used to. But what's more important, we tend to get different kinds of diseases now, with very different causes and consequences. A millennium ago, a young hunter-gatherer inadvertently would eat a reed buck riddled with anthrax, and the consequences are clear. She's dead a few days later. Now, a young lawyer unthinkingly decides that red meat, fried foods, and a couple of beers per dinner constitute a desirable diet, and the consequences are anything but clear. A half-century later, maybe he's crippled with cardiovascular disease, or maybe he's taking bike trips with his grandkids. Which outcome occurs depends on some obvious nuts and bolts factors, like what his liver does with cholesterol, what levels of certain enzymes are in his fat cells, whether he has any congenital weaknesses in the walls of his blood vessels. But the outcome will also depend heavily on such surprising factors as his personality, the amount of emotional stress he experiences over the years, whether he has someone's shoulder to cry on when those stressors occur. There has been a revolution in medicine concerning how we think about the diseases that now afflict us. It involves recognizing the interactions between the body and the mind, the ways in which emotions and personality can have a tremendous impact on the functioning and health of virtually every cell in the body. It is about the role of stress in making some of us more vulnerable to disease, the ways in which some of us cope with stressors, and the critical notion that you cannot really understand a disease in vacuo, but rather only in the context of the person suffering from that disease. This is the subject of my book. I begin by trying to clarify the meaning of the nebulous concept of stress, and to teach, with a minimum of pain, how various hormones and parts of the brain are mobilized in response to stress. I then focus on the links between stress and increased risk for certain types of disease, going chapter by chapter through the effects of stress on the circulatory system, on energy storage, on growth, reproduction, the immune system, and so on. Next, I describe how the aging process may be influenced by the amount of stress experienced over a lifetime. I then examine the link between stress and the most common and arguably most crippling of psychiatric disorders, major depression. As part of updating the material for this third edition, I have added 2 new chapters, one on the interactions between stress and sleep, and one on what stress has to do with addiction. In addition, of the chapters that appeared in the previous edition, I rewrote about a third to half of the material. Some of the news in this book is grim. Sustained or repeated stress can disrupt our bodies in seemingly endless ways. Yet most of us are not incapacitated by stress-related disease. Instead, we cope, both physiologically and psychologically. And some of us are spectacularly successful at it. For the listener who has held on until the end, the final chapter reviews what is known about stress management and how some of its principles can be applied to our everyday lives. There is much to be optimistic about. I believe that everyone can benefit from some of these ideas and can be excited by the science on which they are based. Science provides us with some of the most elegant, stimulating puzzles that life has to offer. It throws some of the most provocative ideas into our arenas of moral debate. Occasionally, it improves our lives. I love science, and it pains me to think that so many are terrified of the subject, or feel that choosing science means that you cannot also choose compassion, or the arts, or be awed by nature. Science is not meant to cure us of mystery, but to reinvent and reinvigorate it. Thus, I think that any science book for non-scientists should attempt to convey that excitement, to make the subject interesting and accessible, even by those who would normally not be caught dead near the subject. That has been a particular goal of mine in this book. Often it has meant simplifying complex ideas. As will be obvious, this book cites the work of a tremendous number of scientists. Contemporary lab science is typically carried out by large teams of people. Throughout the book, I refer to the work of Jane Doe or John Smith for the sake of brevity. It is almost always the case that such work was carried out by Doe or Smith along with a band of junior colleagues. There is a tradition among stress physiologists who dedicate their books to their spouses or significant others, an unwritten rule that you are supposed to incorporate something cutesy about stress in the dedication. So, to Madge, who attenuates my stressors, for Arturo, the source of my eustress, for my wife, who, over the course of the last umpteen years, has put up with my stress-induced hypertension, ulcerative colitis, loss of libido, and displaced aggression. I will forego that style in the actual dedication of this book to my wife, as I have something simpler to say. Chapter 1. Why Don't Zebras Get Ulcers? It's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're lying in bed. You have something immensely important and challenging to do that next day. A critical meeting, a presentation, an exam. You have to get a decent night's rest, but you're still wide awake. You try different strategies for relaxing. Take deep, slow breaths. Try to imagine restful mountain scenery. But instead you keep thinking that unless you fall asleep in the next minute, your career is finished. Thus you lie there, more tense by the second. If you do this on a regular basis, somewhere around 2:30, when you're really getting clammy, an entirely new disruptive chain of thought will no doubt intrude. Suddenly, amid all your other worries, you begin to contemplate that nonspecific pain you've been having in your side, that sense of exhaustion lately, that frequent headache. The realization hits you. I'm sick, fatally sick. Oh, why didn't I recognize the symptoms? Why did I have to deny it? Why didn't I go to the doctor? When it's 2:30 on those mornings, I always have a brain tumor. These are very useful for that sort of terror, because you can attribute every conceivable nonspecific symptom to a brain tumor and justify your panic. Perhaps you do, too. Or maybe you lie there thinking that you have cancer, or an ulcer, or that you've just had a stroke. Even though I don't know you, I feel confident in predicting that you don't lie there thinking, I just know it, I have leprosy. True? You are exceedingly unlikely to obsess about getting a serious case of dysentery if it starts pouring. And few of us lie there feeling convinced that our bodies are teeming with intestinal parasites or liver flukes. Of course not. Our nights are not filled with worries about scarlet fever, malaria, or bubonic plague. Cholera doesn't run rampant through our communities. River blindness, black water fever, and elephantiasis are third-world exotica. Few female listeners will die in childbirth, and even fewer of those listening to this are likely to be malnourished. thanks to revolutionary advances in medicine and public health.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?